I sat down.
Good evening. So, today I wanted to talk a little bit about my influences. And as you can hear on our lovely little theme song, I'm sorry we cut it short for those of you who really like it, but just wanted to jump right in here. But as you can hear for our lovely little theme song, I really like jazz. Kind of got into jazz a little bit more recently, but I really like jazz, kind of like some of that horn just a little bit, some of the classic stuff. But for those of you who don't know, my musical journey really started with Johnny Cash. I had heard some of the recordings that he did with Rick Rubin, and there was something that stood out from everything I had heard up to that point. I was probably 12 or 13, but it stood out from everything, all of the music that I had grown up with and everything that I had ever heard. There was nothing like it, and I had to get my hands on a guitar, and I had to consume and learn every single song that he did. And eventually I did. And then through that, I kind of discovered some of his duets that he did with Bob Dylan, songs like One Too Many Mornings, and songs like Girl from the North Country. And started to get into like, who is this Bob Dylan guy? And obviously the Nashville Skyline album, which those two songs come from, was a little bit different than most of the rest of what Dylan had done previously and would later go on to do. But between that and then Mr. Tambourine Man, I latched on and couldn't get enough. And my favorite period very quickly kind of became the 60s, because in the 60s, Bob Dylan and Johnny Cash both made some of their best music. And then I started collecting records around that time and really enjoying people like songwriters like Chris Christopherson. Just incredibly amazing, heartfelt, human, just this world weariness about them. I love that, still love that. And then getting into like Janis Joplin, who's got a very similar thing going on, but in a very different way. And that kind of got me into some of the blues, which I had always liked, but never really, I liked those riffs and those, that style, but I've never really, before that, I didn't know what it was. Couldn't put my finger on it. And what I had known about the blues prior to that was guys like Louis Armstrong and B.B. King, which I came to appreciate more a little later. But initially, when I started getting into the blues, I started looking into all of my heroes' influences and finding guys like Robert Johnson and Son House, which, if you've ever heard it, it's very different from modern music. It's a very different approach. And then Reverend Gary Davis, good Lord, Death Don't Have No Mercy. That's an incredible song. And so that was kind of my introduction to the blues, is like these Delta cats. And then a little bit later getting into like Lightnin' Hopkins, which I'm from Texas, and if you're a musician from Texas, you can't not know who Lightnin' Hopkins is, especially if you're a guitar player or a blues guy. No offense to Stevie Ray Vaughan, but Lightnin' Hopkins is the guy. And then, of course, getting into like where I'm at now in my blues journey, with some of my favorites being Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and Hound Dog Taylor. That guy with a slide. For those of you who don't know, Dog has 6 fingers, and so he plays slide with his with his smallest finger, his 6th finger, and then with the other 5 he plays the frets. The guy's insane. But yeah, his slide work was pretty influential to me, I would say. Although my slide, I would say, is slightly different style. I can't do what he does. he was to blues what Hendrix was to rock, in my opinion. I know that's probably a hot take, but he was very similar, in my opinion. Just very innovative and breathed this life and energy and kind of just changed the game a bit. Same way that Robert had done in the 30s, I think it was. But that's kind of how I came into the blues, and learning that around probably maybe 2010, 2009-ish, and trying to, I was not very good, but trying to get my hands on learning some of this stuff, and then refining my technique over the years, and eventually starting with some of the recordings that I did, songs like Voodoo Man and Trouble, some of my first albums. So we're going to take a moment here. I know we've only been talking for just a few minutes here, but we're going to take a moment here and listen to one of my songs called Sick and Tired, from the Chasing Ghost album. And you can kind of hear some of that Howlin' Wolf and Hound Dog Taylor influence. Hope you guys enjoy. Gin. Oh, come on, baby, bring me my bottle of gin. Stand back, darling, your hubby's getting drunk again. Woke up this morning, just about the break of day. Woke up this morning, just about the break of day. Look for my baby, see what she had to say. She said, I'm tired of you, daddy, you getting drunk every night. Tired of you, daddy, with you getting drunk every night. I know you're a good man, but you gotta treat yourself right. You know I'm sick and tired of picking you up off the floor. You know I'm sick and tired of picking you up off the floor. You know I'm sick and tired, believe it's time for you to go. To see if I could stay the night. I called up my best friend to see if I could stay the night. He said, don't you come here, you know we gonna drink and fight. What am I to do with no place for room and board? What All right, and welcome back. So the only one who would have me was a woman named Betty Ford. Uh, so, uh, big secret, I actually stole that line from an interview with Johnny Cash. He was talking about trying to get clean from his drug addiction. And he said the only house that would take him was the house of the Lord or something like that, and the only one who would have him was a woman named Betty Ford. So I kind of took that, twisted it on my own a little bit. And for those of you who don't know, was Betty Ford is a clinic for alcoholics and people with substance abuse issues to try and get clean, try and sober up, kick their addictions. It's a rehab facility, essentially. Very famous rehab facility. It's been open for a very long time. So I thought that was kind of a witty line when I was writing, and I'm still kind of proud of that line, to be honest, even though I stole it. But as Bob Dylan once said, amateurs borrow, but masters will steal. And not calling myself a master, but simply saying that I'm trying to be and that I want to be. And I think that's something that we should all aspire to be, is mastering our craft, and be masters of our trade. And that's not something for us to ever decide for ourselves when we've achieved, but it's something that you'll know that you've accomplished something when you see other people start putting that on you. The other side of that is, Hendrix even said so himself. He said, I don't care about being the best guitar player in the world. I just want to be better than I was yesterday. And I think that I should have led with this, actually. That is the hallmark of a craftsman, right? You should always, no matter where you're at in your journey, on whether it's music or whether it's business or whether it's, no matter what you're trying to do in life, no matter what your goals are, your goal should always be to be better today than you were yesterday. And be, constantly improve. Now that's not to say that you need to hustle all the time. Sometimes you got to take a break, take a step back, and breathe. Like Willie Nelson said, sometimes when the songwriting mojo isn't there, sometimes you just got to go out and live a little bit, get a little bit more experience, so you can kind of come back with fresh eyes. And that coming from one of the best songwriters of the 20th century, I think that's good advice. So we're going to take a moment here and listen to another song. So like I said earlier, I really got into the 60s when I was a teenager, and still have a fondness and appreciation for 60s music, and particularly psychedelic rock. So, and when I say that, I mean like the Beatles, Jimi Hendrix particularly. There's been some modern psych rock bands like The Pilgrim, for those of you who know who they are. They're a pretty good band. Obviously, like Janis Joplin, and then you've got Pink Floyd. All those bands, everybody, like it's great. And what I like is the experimental aspect of it, right? They're trying to push the boundaries of what music can do and what music can be, and how that can relate to people, but also what can be achieved sonically, right? And expanding the musical experience to something beyond just the day-to-day. And for those of you who don't know, psych rock was actually born out of, I think it was like space jazz, which tried to do a lot of very similar things. but before electric instruments. So they're doing a lot of this with horns and guitars and whatever other instruments they had available. And it's definitely a neat genre. Kind of got a little popular in the 50s, which explains why psych rock got so popular in the 60s. But it's very experimental, and it's very, electric instruments were still in their infancy in the 50s, but they did exist. But in the 40s and 50s, it was a very experimental type of music that was coming into its own, and that's really where people like Hendrix and the Beatles got a lot of their influence for some of their experimental music. So we're going to take a moment, and we're going to listen to a song that I did in 2021 called Lost in the Aether.
Way too long, spaced out in the far reaches of my mind. No way back home, lost until the end of time. Lost in the ether. Wandered through the jungle after I tripped over Saturn's rings. Saw rainfall in the desert, saw those gorgeous mountains sing, saw the rockets rain from the sky. The ground trembled around me and fear in my eyes, and I'm stuck out of bounds, floating, lost in the ether.
are back. So, how was that nice little tune? Nothing really groundbreaking, I know, but nice little psych rock tune. Um, as you'll see with most of my music that I've put on here, I'm not really trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm just trying to create something that is expressed from within myself, within my own experience, and something that I find that most people can somehow relate to. And I feel like most people can relate to feeling lost in life, especially like when most of us, me especially, we're in our early 20s, just trying to figure life out, trying to navigate this thing, that what it means to be an adult, right? Trying to navigate bills and trying to live our dreams while also being grounded in reality, which is a very difficult thing, and just just struggling and working and trying to make our way in the world, especially in today's economy. But I feel like that's something that most of us can relate to, and that's kind of what this the emotion that this is expressing, right? It's just that feeling of floating, right? Not really being grounded. So I feel like that's something that can relate to. If you didn't know, both of these songs are on the same album, and so you could probably extrapolate from that I am, or that I was during that time, going through some things and really starting to get my life together and kind of clean some things up. And I don't know, I think we all kind of hit rough patches. I think that's always something that we can relate to. Whether or not you go through those exact same experiences, your experiences may vary, but the feeling is the same, I think. Maybe I have no idea what I'm talking about. But I want to change for a moment, change gears, and talk about some albums that really affected me, and some albums that I find really inspirational. And when I'm hit a songwriting block, albums that I go to looking for that wellspring of what initially inspired me, right? So, first one I'm kind of going to talk about is the recordings that Johnny Cash did with Rick Rubin at the end of his life. There's something, Rick Rubin brought a heaviness to some of Cash's music without necessarily bringing in like the heavily distorted guitars and the craziness from metal, but he brings in like just this, he takes the world weariness of Cash's aged voice and the heaviness and conviction with which Cash sings, and brings in musicians that can craft a sound around that, and craft a sound that shares and emphasizes the heaviness in Cash's voice and the world weariness in some of his music. That's going to be a common theme, is I love music that you just get this notion that somebody's just kind of tired and they've seen it all, and I love that feeling. Songs like Chris Christopherson, To Beat the Devil. Either Johnny Cash or Chris Christopherson's version of Sunday Morning Coming Down. There's just something about that is infinitely relatable, even to me as a teenager who had hardly seen anything in life, but instantly recognized the integrity of what they're saying, and the honesty, the vulnerability, in ways that a lot of, especially modern music, just isn't, right? Nothing against modern music, like there are definitely some jams out there, but sometimes you need to feel something that you can relate to. And that's where the Chris Christophersons come in, right? The Christopherson album, the Me and Bobby McGee album. That's where freaking Tom Waits comes in, right? That first album that he dropped. There's just, or man, there's so many beautiful songs from Tom Waits. Songs like Old 55 and I Hope That I Don't Fall in Love with You, or Christmas Card from a Hooker. Like, these songs, there's something about it, of people that are, stories about people that are on some of the bottom rungs of society, or people that are on the fringes of society, shall we say. I just absolutely love that. Or, you know, songs that feel like they could be anybody. Freaking songs written by a janitor in at Columbia Studios, a guy who, for the most part, was disregarded by his co-workers. And then he goes on to become one of the greatest songwriters of his generation. That stuff like that, that is just absolutely amazing to me. Because, I mean, who can't relate to that? Who can't relate to being the janitor or the waitress or the, you know, like, we've all been there, worked those jobs that just take your soul. Customer service jobs. And so something like that, we've all been heartbroken. We've all felt joy and pain. But being able to relate those things in a way that is imperfect and human. And I think that's why Tom Waits chooses to sing the way he does. If you notice, how he sings on his first album is not how he would go on to sing for the rest of his career. But that sounds like he's almost like he's gargling marbles. He sounds like Batman, right? There's something human in that. It's not traditionally beautiful. He's not Frank Sinatra. He's not trying to be. But it's the same magic that I was talking about earlier with Louis Armstrong's Wonderful World, right? Just something about that gravelly voice, and he's energetic, but he sounds almost tired and world-weary, and that, I think, is, you can't get that from, nothing against auto-tune, but like, you can't get that from auto-tune, right? You can't get that emotion, that humanity from auto-tune, right? Like, you can use digital instruments and not get a digital sound, but you're not going to get that level of humanity from a digital sound. And then, two, when creating music, you can also blend organic instruments, that is to say, things like a guitar or a piano, things that create sound organically. Organic instruments with digital instruments. You can blend the two and create some of the most amazing sounds. We do it all the time here in the modern world. And while Daft Punk is cool, nothing against Daft Punk, but while Daft Punk is cool and they definitely have some jams, you're not going to get that level of humanity from them as you would like Chris Christopherson. That being said, I think their whole point is their art is trying to point out the lifelessness of the industrialized world. That's what I got. And I think that there is something incredibly artistic about that. So there definitely is a place for the non-human, the less human, I should say, aspects of music, or creating things that are more digital and more robotic. There's a place for all kinds of art like that, but knowing when to apply what techniques, I think, is where the mastery comes in, right? Knowing what sounds and what methods are going to hammer home your message. And everybody's got different tastes, right? But I like that feeling. I was going to talk about albums that impacted me. Okay, so here we go. The Christofferson album, which later became Me and Bobby McGee. Then you've got, I actually have a copy of this hanging on my wall. It's kind of like the gold standard for what I aim for when I'm recording an album, is the Blonde on Blonde album by Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan's got a lot of bangers, but Blonde on Blonde is kind of a standout, in my opinion. Johnny Cash, 100 Highways, the one he did with Rick Rubin. Johnny Cash with his Hot and Blue Guitar, the one that he did with Sam Phillips. It's an album collection of the singles that he did with Sun Records. There's something about the beginning and the end of an artist's career that have a fire that a lot of the rest of the music just doesn't. Joan Baez's first album, called Joan Baez. There's something about that album that has how do I say this? It's like it's clean, like a spring that's never been touched by human hands, or like glacier water flowing down out of the mountains. There's something about it that's just clean, I guess. It has something to say, but it's not. I don't know. But that first album that she put out is, I would say, one of her best. That and Diamonds and Rust was a good one too. Songs like Tumbleweed, I love that song. And then you got albums like Hard Again by Muddy Waters. The Lomax recordings, that the 29 songs we got from Robert Johnson. Johnny Cash at Folsom. And then, of course, San Quentin. Those two albums go hand in hand. You can't listen to one without the other. The Pearl album by Janis Joplin. That, oh my God. It's such a beautiful album. And the story of her death is so heartbreaking, because it's like she finally gets her life together, right? She's finally kicked her heroin habit. She's in a much more positive environment. She's with a band that she actually enjoys being around. She's surrounded by people that she actually enjoys being around. For the first time in years, she actually feels inspired. And she feels inspired by playing with these musicians that she's playing with. The studio let her handpick this band, and some of the songs that they made were incredible. And then she gets hit up by an old friend, and they go do heroin together, and she relapses into her addiction and overdoses. And it's one of the saddest things. And she was only 27 years old. I often stop to think, like, that was almost the most beautiful and productive and creative period of her life, cut far too short. And it makes me incredibly sad to think about what she could have done with more time, what she could have done had she made better decisions that day, right? And addiction is a hard thing to beat. Statistically, most addicts will have a relapse at some point in their life, and that's a hard truth. That's a hard one to swallow. And sometimes it will kill them, like in her case. And addiction is a hard thing to beat. It's a monster. So I've kind of chased some rabbits here. But I guess we'll close out with one more song and then call it an evening. So I'm going to play one for you guys. It's a cover song written by John Prine. And the first time I heard it was a DVD of a Johnny Cash concert in Austin, Texas. And I really loved his cover version, and so I recorded one of my own. And I hope you guys enjoy it.
Sam Stone came home to his wife and family after serving in conflict overseas. The time that he'd served shattered all his nerves and left a little shrapnel in his knee. But the morphine eased the pain as the grass grew around his brain, gave him all the confidence he lacked. With a purple heart and a monkey on his back, there's a hole in Daddy's arm where all the money goes. He must have suffered a lot, I suppose. Little pictures have big ears, don't you stop to count the years, 'cause sweet songs never last too long on broken radios. Sammy's welcome home didn't last too long. He went to work when he'd spent his last dime, but he had to take to stealing when he got that empty feeling from $1 million habit that gave him no overtime. And the gold rolled through his veins like 1,000 railroad trains, and eased his mind in the hours that it chose. Kids running around wearing other folks' clothes. Well, there's a hole in Daddy's arm where all our money goes. Daddy must have suffered a lot, I suppose. Little pictures have big ears, don't you stop to count the years, 'cause sweet songs never last too long on broken radios. Sam Stone was alone when he'd popped his last balloon. climbing the walls while sitting in his chair. And he breathed his last request as the air hung heavy with death, their overdose still hovering in the air. But life had lost its fun, and there was nothing to be done. Trade the house that he'd bought on a GI Bill for a flag-draped casket near a local hero's hill. Well, there's a hole in Daddy's arm where all her money goes. Daddy must have suffered a lot back then, I suppose. Little pictures have big ears, don't look back to count the years. Sweet songs never last too long on broken radios. Sam Stone came home to his wife and family after serving in conflict overseas.
All right, and we're back. So, I hope you guys enjoyed that song. I know I certainly did. The songs that I wrote, you can find on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, or whatever your favorite listening platform is. I hope you have enjoyed today's episode, and we will see you all next time